Hey guys, welcome to my 5 minute readings from my totally messy, somewhat random library. If anybody knows me, they know that I have books almost everywhere. And as you see, kind of right here, you see that they're kind of stacked on different various bookshelves and stuff. I have a dream of actually having a actual library, but as of right now, I am kind of books everywhere. And so what I do is I'll pick a random book, open up to a random spot, and begin reading 5 minutes so that you can kind of find out what the book is about, or maybe even just hear something that you need to, or suit your fancy. So today, the random book I picked is called The Legend of the Monk and the Merchant by Terry Felder. Now, the cool thing about this book is I was listening to a podcast for entrepreneurs, and they suggested a book, different entrepreneurs, and somebody suggested this book. I don't even remember who, but I went ahead and bought it, and it actually turned out to be a really, really good book. So I'm going to, like always, open up to a random page, no bookmarks, no pre-designed place, and I'm going to set the alarm for 5 minutes. So let's go ahead and begin. All right, I'll start right now. Then I saw it, the same old dock with the same boats carefully tied to the wooden post. The boat dock was deserted. I quickly scanned it in search of a low flame or a crouching man, but I saw nothing. I then eased my way in and jumped out onto the planks. I tied my new boat to the post and quickly walked up and down the pier, expecting to find my friend. This time he wasn't waiting, at least not here. I walked toward the house. As I approached the front door, I noticed that there were no lights. There was no smell of fine cooking floating through the air. As I drew closer to the entry, I saw a small paper folded in half and stuck onto the door with a short nail. It was addressed to me. I quickly pulled the sheet from the door and opened it. There was a short message with instructions written in black ink. It read, "Meet me at the church near the mill. Mass begins at midnight. Do not be late. Welcome, my friend, Alicio." I reread the note and then wondered why he had arranged to meet me at the church. I checked to see if I had all my belongings. I estimated that it would take me 30 minutes to walk. Even though there was a carriage readily available at the stables a few yards down the street, I decided it would be welcome exercise to go by foot. As I set out, I reached down into the leather pouch hanging over my shoulder. My fingers felt the edges of the journal that I had purchased 3 years before. Since my last meeting with Alicio, I had kept a sort of diary of my business and personal affairs. I was eager to share it with Alicio and add other principles to it. The clouds broke up over my head. The moon shone down on the path in front of me, illuminating the dirt at my feet and the rooftops of the houses scattered along the road. The smells and sounds of the nearby canal suddenly reminded me of the long nights that I had spent with Filippo talking about God. We would sit on the edge of the canal and look up at the stars, and he'd tell me about the greatness of our Creator. Something about those evenings had forever reassured me. In fact, every time I looked up at the heavens at night, I remembered the words, "For I know the thoughts that I think towards you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you a future and a hope." As I shuffled along the road that night, I whispered several prayers to God, prayers of gratitude for the life He'd blessed me with, but also prayers of guidance for the tough decisions that I was struggling with in my heart. I could hear the sounds of people gathering somewhere from the road ahead, and I realized it must be the church preparing for midnight mass. It wasn't normal for a church to have mass at midnight during the summer months, but it had become sort of a tradition at this particular church. I remember during the months that I worked on the docks, Alicio left the house late on Saturday evenings to seek after God. The church was very simple but elegant. It must have been 50 feet long and 30 feet wide, with a large archway over the front door. It had several stained glass windows, each at least 15 feet high, stretching from the ceiling to the ground. On one of the windows there was a beautiful picture of St. Thomas, and on another a picture of Moses carrying the 10 Commandments. The principles of God, I thought to myself as I walked closer to the church. The doors were open and several people were gathering inside. I quickly scanned the sanctuary for Alicio, but with no luck. I then eased my way into a pew in the back of the church. As I did, 2 altar boys dressed in white passed by me. I smiled as I remembered the stories that Alicio had told me about him and Filippo. Suddenly, I heard a sound and I spun around. I saw Alicio sitting in the corner by himself. I wasn't sure how I had missed him. He smiled his usual broad grin and waved for me to join him. We greeted one another and then quietly waited for the service to begin. As I sat in the church that evening, I couldn't help but remember the days and nights spent at the monastery, how different my life had become. At the monastery, I had learned to go for long periods of time without talking. Now, I was known for my ability to communicate with others. At the monastery, I had little or no contact with women since we had all made a vow of celibacy. Now, I was considering the idea of marriage for the first time. At the monastery, I owed nothing. Now, I had boats and employees, and I was building my wealth. My thoughts were suddenly interrupted by the familiar sounds of the liturgy I loved and knew so well. I stood and spoke the holy words along with several dozen others at the Mass that evening. The priest stood to read from the scriptures before communion. For the next few moments, he read the familiar words of Jesus regarding the rich young ruler. He noted that the man was told to sell everything he had and to give it to the poor. As the priest said these words, I couldn't help but notice that he seemed as though he was looking directly at Alicio, who had a pleasant smile on his face during the entire sermon. The priest then told us that Jesus had said that it would be more difficult for a rich man to enter into heaven than for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. Again, I could sense an unspoken exchange between the priest and my friend. I couldn't help but feel guilty about all my own wealth. After all, I had left a life that was totally submitted to God to pursue profit. I shook my head and tried to concentrate on the rest of the sermon. All right, guys, and that is where we're ending the reading today on page 59. Now, believe it or not, this is a book about business. It's talking about how to actually be a business person and be in the marketplace, and still keep a relationship with God. As so many people, they tend to think that it has to be one or the other, either business or relationship with God or commitment to God. And this book is really, it's kind of like a legend. It says 12 keys to successful living. So I definitely recommend it. I've read it before, even reading it now. It's been a while, so I may go ahead and read it again. But there it is. And thank you for joining me. I'll see you next time. All right, for Pick a Book, Any Book. And I will see you tomorrow.